On today's episode of the Property Edge podcast,
when the real estate agent, the finance broker and the bank and the conveyancer and the consumer are all singing from the same hymn sheet, they're all communicating effectively, you end up with a really generally a seamless, straightforward transaction where everybody comes out of it happy. That very first piece of data that gets entered into the system, if it's entered in correctly, you can guarantee it's going to flow the whole way through the transaction, whether you're in the lending space, the real estate space, or the conveyancing space. That is going to happen.
hello and welcome to another episode of the Property Edge podcast. Today, we're looking at the other half of a transaction. So the agent handles the listing, negotiation through the contract, and then it's over to the conveyancer to take that deal and turn it into a legal, settled transfer. And of course, that part of the journey has an enormous impact on how the client, your client, experiences their overall transaction. Joining me today is someone who knows all about this. Kylie Dillon is the CEO of Realtime Conveyancer and used to be a conveyancer herself, and so understands the conveyancing practice inside and out. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's brilliant to have you here today and have a different perspective on real estate transactions. Before we go any further, I do need to disclose that the Land Services are the producers of this podcast. Our CEO is also on the board of the Realtime Conveyancer platform business as well. Now, Kylie, you used to be a conveyancer. You're now running one of Australia's hottest PropTechs, Realtime Conveyancer. It's interesting that with digital settlements coming in, there was a lot of talk at the time about how conveyancing might be coming to an end. And I know real estate agents find that their area is under pressure as well with the different portals and the different processes going on.
The consumers tell us that they are still not ready to remove the human element from the conveyancing process. They're also not ready to let go of real estate agents or finance brokers either, which is, I'm sure everybody's really happy to hear about. But they are starting to demand a different experience, and they do want a more digital experience. So I think that we will still see that there is always going to be a manual, or for some time there will be a manual element to this, but the digital transformation is aiming to remove that, right? Everybody out there at the moment in the PropTech space is trying to introduce tools that create visibility, increase efficiencies, and remove risk. They're the three things that people really focus on because they are, I guess, from a consumer demand perspective, but also from running a business perspective, how do we increase our efficiencies and reduce our risk? There is so much risk that sits within the buying and selling process. We know that cybercrime and email fraud, cyber hacking, whatever we want to call it, is at an all-time high. And there are a lot of PropTechs out there trying to solve, or not even PropTechs, but technology as a whole that are trying to solve for that. We know that the hackers continue to get smarter. We have consumers that aren't necessarily tech savvy, and we also have a lot of, whether it's conveyancers, lawyers, real estate agents and finance brokers who might be excellent at what they do, but they may be a one-man band that works from home that doesn't have the support that they need to make sure that they're running a secure business. So we will find that there is a lot more technology around removing risks. We will find technology that replaces the low-value, mundane, repetitive tasks, the rekeying of data, for example. I know real-time as a whole. So when I had my conveyancing business, I was using up to 12 unintegrated systems and tools every day, not just me, but my team as a whole. And so technology is looking to, how do we remove those unintegrated systems and tools? And I know that's obviously what we do with Realtime. We've brought every one of those systems and tools into the platform so the conveyancer never has to leave it. Obviously, there'll be a lot more emerging platforms around VOI, AML, and e-signing, and I know that we'll probably talk to that a little bit later on. Automation is huge. I feel like I hear that word every day. Integrated workflows is another one. Again, how do we streamline processes? And how do we start thinking ahead of what the next task is going to be? So AI and automation, like I said, they're two words that I hear dozens of times every day.
Speaking of friction points, so friction points in any transaction, and the use of tech to overcome them, which friction points do you see in that settlement process are tech solvable, and which ones are more of a human or maybe a process issue?
Yeah, I think obviously rekeying of data is huge. And the fact that a number of people within the one office will be responsible for rekeying that very same data. So, how do we produce tools that actually remove that? Because again, that sort of fits in the bucket for us as a low value, mundane, repetitive task, right? It's a necessary evil, it needs to be done, but it can take up huge amounts of time. Now, that very first piece of data that gets entered into the system, if it's entered in correctly, you can guarantee it's going to flow the whole way through the transaction, whether you're in the lending space, the real estate space, or the conveyancing space. That is going to happen. And there's also data that we all use, that we purchase, whether it's VOI, whether it's title searches. We all purchase it, we all use it, but we don't share it. And I understand there's a reason that we don't share it. But again, I also understand that nationally there are different legislation and regulation, and that there are instances where people can share data, but not sharing that data means more expense to the consumer as well, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So if you could wave your magic wand and fix one of those things, which would you choose?
For me, and I guess again, coming back to why real-time exists, it is removing those low-value, mundane, repetitive tasks so that the conveyancers can focus on the things that they really are good at. And I'm not saying that they're not good at rekeying, they're not good at rekeying data, but I think the role of the conveyancer is going to change over time, as will the role of the real estate agent. And so where is your time best spent? It's not spent sitting at a computer rekeying the same data 4 or 5 times into 4 or 5 different platforms. It's about nurturing your client and communicating with your client and not even just your client, but all parties in the transaction. Right? It's the networking that needs to be done to grow a business, but it's the communication is key. And so when the real estate agent and the finance broker and the bank and the conveyancer and the consumer are all singing from the same hymn sheet, they're all communicating effectively, you end up with a really generally a seamless, straightforward transaction where everybody comes out of it happy.
Yeah, and it's brilliant that you've said that, because one of the key themes in this podcast, when we talk to people in tech or people in real estate, is always about how core to real estate is that human interaction, being personable, being that trusted friend during that process, and that a lot of tech is just helping keep the automation or the frustrating low-value things out of the way so that you can be the person of trust for your client. And what you're saying here is the conveyancer similar.
Yeah, absolutely. So when, you talk about the friction points, well, as obviously, there is the constant rekeying of data, the unintegrated systems and tools, missing contract information. So, if it's not on the contract when the conveyancer receives it, again, it generally seems to flow through. It also doesn't create trust. It's a conversation that the conveyancer has to have with the consumer. The consumer wants to know why there's information missing. The conveyancer doesn't want to throw the real estate agent under the bus by saying, there's missing information from a contract, for example. Because again, you want the consumer to feel that they have engaged the right people in the right roles to look after them, to get them the outcome that they need. And the relationships between the conveyancers and the brokers and the conveyancers is so incredibly important, and it has to be one that is really tight and trustworthy, right? But if it's not, that's when you start to see there's fragmentation, there's friction, and there's frustration with that lack of trust within that ecosystem.
Well, talking about trust, with the new laws coming in next year, or further of those legislation coming next year with AML and the VOI stuff, this invisible compliance requirement for this whole transaction, where do you see the conveyancers taking the lead here and taking pressure off other areas, given the role they have played for many years when it comes to the legal side of things?
Yeah, there's still a lot to be learned around the whole AML process. And obviously, we have our integration partners and we work very closely with those to make sure that they're doing what they need to do in order for us to be able to make sure that we've got the best possible solution in our platform to keep our conveyancers and their clients safe. Because I know as a conveyancer, they don't want to be an AML provider, and I don't want to build AML, and I don't want to build the various solutions. So we rely heavily on our relationships with our partners to make sure that they are providing those tools. I think it is really scary. A lot of conveyancers are super nervous, a little bit anxious and scared by what this actually means. And I feel like when the government are trying to find a solution, I know I speak on behalf of probably every conveyancer that is out there today, everything seems to land with the conveyancer. You know, if they can't solve for it themselves, the one person that has the trusted relationship is the conveyancer to the consumer is always trusted, and it's where they could capture the information. Right in the heart of that settlement conveyancing process is the opportunity to capture data and information that can't be captured anywhere else. So there is a lot that falls on the conveyancer. But, there is definitely growing compliance pressure. There is, the already acknowledged, highlighted that the manual checks are inconsistent. And that's just a reason this technology is going to be brought into play. It needs to move from just a tick box compliance to a real risk managed compliance process. And I know that I've spoken to many conveyancers and lawyers who are talking about or considering engaging a risk compliance officer, which is never something that we've had in our business as a whole. We've never had that role that needed to be fulfilled. It'll be making sure that ideas is captured securely, that it's stored securely. And I think the AML solution, or the AML providers will come up with the workflow that is not just consistent, but is easily auditable, which will give the conveyancer peace of mind that they're partnered with the right person.
Yeah, and it seems to me we're chatting here at the end of November 2025, and we still haven't got a clear picture of what things are going to look like come July next year. And so I think everyone's putting a lot of reliance on relationships with the AML suppliers, expecting them to have the expertise and the solution that will meet all the requirements, aren't they? So with RTC, are you picking one, or are you hedging your bets with more than one?
We integrate with anybody. Like, we are not agnostic in that particular space, but we have two companies that we've partnered with that are reliable, trusted, well-known to industry. They've been around for a really long time. And so they obviously have the trusted relationships, but they've also given us the reassurance and certainty that we need to carry on that relationship with them as they progress from a VOI provider to a VOI/AML provider.
And so your recommendation to, say, an agent or an agency looking for some sort of partner in this field, because they're going to go through the same journey that you've gone through, is to look at tenure, is to look at that side of things?
Yeah, I think, it's very easy to get distracted by the new bright, shiny toy, right? And I think, we saw this when electronic signing first came into play. All of a sudden there was, we went from just one reputable national signing solution being DocuSign to, obviously then there was Adobe as well, but DocuSign was the more prominent. And then there was, dozens of e-signing solutions that just resurrected themselves. And I know I get pitched to all the time. I'm often getting requests from different providers say, hey, can I show you our solution? We'd like to partner with Realtime. What does this look like? And, they can be really great people who have built really great products. But for us, it is, well, do you know anything about conveyancing? Have you met with the conveyancers? Do you understand the industry? The fact that it's highly compliant, highly legislated, highly regulated. And I don't want to be having to do my due diligence on making sure whether or not your product as a startup is going to meet the needs for our consumers. I mean, I've been there myself, right? Like, I know what was needed to make sure that we had a platform that was highly legislated, highly regulated, highly compliant, ticked all those boxes. So, but it's also, you want to make sure that the tool that you're going to give your users is a tool that's going to be around in 6 months' time as well.
Yeah, that's very fair. And I think, so my last question to you today is about conveyancing platforms and real estate platforms. How do you see them integrating further? What are the good natural handoff points, or where can they work together for the betterment of the client experience?
Yeah, really great question. I love this question because, again, there's a lot of technology out there that thinks that they can solve for a problem that in an industry they know nothing about. And so I think first up, not all technology is good technology. So asking yourself whether, when you're building the technology, whether you're partnering with, are they building technology for good? It's a bit like how we use AI and automation, right? Are we doing that for good? So we ask ourselves that question all the time in every feature we build. And we're also really, really mindful of making sure that we partner with people who stay in their lane. So, it's like saying, I don't want to go off and be all of these other things. I want to be a real estate portal. I don't want to be an AML provider. I want to offer technology to obviously our core platform powers conveyancing, and then we have our consumer-facing app. And I want those two things to do those two things really, really well and keep our conveyancing clients and their clients, that being the consumers, safe. So I think there will be, and we've seen this happen already, there are different portals and platforms out there that like, how do we get into this space? But I think so long as you're partnering with people, the aim should be to partner with people who provide the client, who is going to give the client the best possible outcome at the end, right? So if you're thinking around how do we give the consumer the most amazing experience that they deserve and entitled to, at the same time giving the conveyancing profession the tools that they need, and that's where those seamless integrations should flow nicely. Like that's where we should be removing friction, right? So everyone we partner with, because again, we get these conversations all the time. We get these questions, how do we partner with Realtime? It's like, we're happy to have that conversation, but what is it that you're trying to achieve? Oh, we don't know. We just know that we want to integrate. But what do you want from that integration? So I think it's holding yourself back to coming back to your own business strategy or to your values, and do they all align? So rather than thinking, I'm going to build this and I'm going to take over that and I'm going to do X, Y, Z, because again, that happens, those conversations happen. It is about how do we give the real estate agents the best possible experience? How do we give the conveyancing profession the best possible experience? And both of those things will ultimately lead to how does we give the consumer the best possible experience? And we know that the consumer demands are changing. Again, from the research that came out of the US was they want a better experience, and they know they're entitled to a better experience because the fact that they're using technology to do other things that gives them a really good experience, a seamless experience, and they're now starting to demand that from buying and selling property. It's like, why do I have it when I book a flight? Why do I have it when I book a hotel? Why do I have it when I get online and order something? Yet this incredibly expensive and emotional experience is still so fractured.
Yeah, so true. And you consider what goes into ordering, buying, fulfilling a $40 gadget from Amazon.
Yeah.
And that happens so beautifully and seamlessly in all the notifications you receive, or buying $1 million property and how disjointed that is at the moment. And there's a lot of upside potential there.
And you've used the Amazon experience or example as a really great opportunity for me to say, this is what sellers or buyers are asking for, right? They want that buy now Amazon experience, what they're looking for. And I feel like the moment, and I've said this previously, the moment you make the decision to throw your hat in the ring and play in this space, it is incumbent upon you to work towards that goal. Whatever role you play in that whole buying and selling process, if you're building technology and you're in that space, that's what you should be aiming for.
I think that's a brilliant place to finish there, Kylie. Thank you so much for your insights today and your time. Much appreciated.
Well, thanks for having me. Like I said, I talk for days on this stuff. I love it so much. I'm so passionate about it.
And that's what we want in the industry, isn't it? Passion. Listeners, viewers, thank you for your time today. And we do encourage you to have a look at propertyedge.app for other episodes of this podcast, or, of course, our research platform. And until the next episode, bye-bye.